Hey TCSTV viewers, it's Evelyn from the camera store, and as much as we love reviewing cameras and gear for you guys, we also love talking about photography. We had another amazing opportunity to interview one of the most decorated photographers of our time. We were invited into his home and darkroom to talk to him about what goes into his internationally regarded photography. He's just about to release his 8th title called Alberta Book that captures scenes from small towns of the prairies. Keep watching to enjoy an interview with one of my photographic heroes, George Weber. What can we expect to see for your very prominently titled book, Alberta Book?
Well, I'm really excited about the book. It's got the largest number of photographs of any book I've ever done. It's got 250 photographs. And it's my little Valentine to small town Alberta. So there's lots of architecture, streets, signage. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I think that's interesting about the book is that it's my first hybrid. It's a mix of digital as well as analog photography.
What are the kind of things that you need to know about in order to capture your photographic vision when you're shooting?
Well, my approach, as you know, technically is pretty simple. I work with normally a 50 or a 35 millimeter lens. Mm-hmm. I tend to do very little editing with my images, but I have, I of course need to have basic skills in terms of image capture and editing and that sort of thing. And my aspiration is always to produce kind of a classic image where the subject speaks, and I add very little to that in terms of the editing of the work.
Right, so these photographs from your book are from Dorothy, Alberta, which is a really unique looking place mm-hmm. in the Alberta landscape, mm-hmm. Close to Drumheller, which many people might know for the Hooters and the Badlands and that sort of thing. So yeah. This is a little church that's outside of, or right in Dorothy.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really kind of an iconic thing, and it's actually two churches. You see this little gravel road going through the middle of the frame, and then on either side of the road are two churches. And I think one was a Catholic and one an Anglican church. Okay. And then of course they're sitting in this incredible desolate Badlands landscape. And I think that those churches have actually, in recent years gone through a little bit of a refurbishing. So this kind of captures them in their kind of rough, feral state, a number of years ago.
Yeah. Now, was this film or digital?
This is actually, this would be a digital capture, yeah. And I think you're right. It's interesting in one sense, it's actually very almost monochromatic in mm-hmm. the way a black and white image would be, because you've got the brown grass, the brown buildings, the brown hills, right? And then that band of cobalt blue sky across the back there, which is an interesting little interplay. Yeah. I think of color photography as being more sort of informational. It really gives you a lot of information specifically about the places that I photographed. And photography, in its ability to sort of capture transition, I don't think there's anything better in the world. No offense to video or to painting or writing or any of the other media. There's something about the sheer power of fact, as Ken Burns once said, that makes the photographic an incredibly compelling way to record life in transition. One of the things that's been one of my blessings as a photographer is my ability to enter often into people's lives, often in very intimate or difficult situations. As you know, the Hutterites don't normally permit photography. As a white person going on to a native reserve, First Nations reserve, and photographing, that's a difficult thing. Photographing people actively engaged in the drug and sex trade, that's a difficult thing to photograph. Now, I find those particular subjects very compelling. I'm deeply attracted to the intimate interplay that is sometimes given. Years ago, I was attending a lecture at ACAD, and a National Geographic photographer rolled out, I think, a great little recipe that I've used myself over the years. And he said, when you're trying to get into intimate situations with people who don't know you and haven't really got a basis for building a trusting relationship, you have to give them 3 pieces of information. You have to tell them who you are, what you would like to do clearly, in terms of I want to spend the day or I want to spend a week photographing you, and then also tell them what you intend to do with those photographs. Mm-hmm. It then creates a situation where people can make an informed decision either to let you in, which is very exciting, or to say no, and I always accept no gracefully and move on.
Now, most of your photography that I've seen has all been in your home, Alberta. Is there a reason why you don't tend to photograph a lot while you're traveling abroad?
Well, for me, Alberta has been, and Saskatchewan have been very inspiring. I feel a great connection. Partly, I think, because I grew up in small town Alberta till I was about 7, and a lot of my values and the people that I interacted with and saw, you know, the Hutterites, First Nations, small town merchants were the sort of people that I wanted to return to photograph when I started to do photography. I think there's a personal connection. There's a bit of almost a biographical thing when I look at these photographs, because I really feel this is, you know, it's kind of part of my own story. I think that for many people, that's you know, the greatest and most enduring photographs that they're going to make in their lives will be photographs that they make in their own homes, in their own environments, as opposed to a trip to Hawaii or Paris.
Yeah. Do you think part of that is because you're able to go back to those places over and over again and see how they've evolved, see how they've changed in terms of the people, but then also how those places look too?
Yeah, the idea of returning to a place that I photographed is hugely important to me. It's interesting, as you know, Diane Arbus, the great American photographer, once said the most exciting thing for her in photography was to go into a place, to enter into a place or a life that she'd never seen before. And I'm just the opposite. My biggest thrill is that returning. And this book, as you know, has been done over a 39-year period. Really, a lot of what I do is about sort of almost passive observation or transcription. Like, I'm in a place, I look around, I'll generally see something really exciting, but it might not be where I want to photograph. I really have to take my cues when I'm photographing from the light conditions on a particular day. And that's what makes the possibility of returning to these places over and over again over the course of many years a viable thing, because depending on the time of day, the time of the year, the atmospheric conditions, these places are never the same twice. They're always different. Now, some days they're not interesting. Some days they're extraordinarily interesting to photograph. And you know, you could go to this street, you could go to this corner, and as we're going to see today, the conditions are going to be different. The ground is going to be different. The signs are going to be different. All of those things have changed simply through the passage of time. And the idea of returning over and over again is that every time you go there, it's the first time. It's always different. It's never the same a second time, right?
This photograph's such an interesting building.
Well, what we're looking at there is the Elks Hall and Drumheller, and this is the earliest photograph that's included in the book. This was taken in 1979. Wow. And for me, the thing that I was so struck by was this incredible mishmash of stuff. You know, you've got these elements of faux brick castle, then you've got this gray slab and this burgundy, these almost Mickey Mouse ears thing coming off of this little parking meter. The head of an elk, and then a clock painted permanently to say 11 o'clock.
Is that painted?
So I don't know if that's 11 a.m. or p.m., right? And the little entrance there, and you know, at one time that building would have had a men's and then a women and escorts entrance way back when. That's, I know, before your time,
wow,
right? Yeah. And that building has gone through many changes. You know, it was a restaurant. I think it's now abandoned. But just the different ways in which the facade has been projected onto the street, I think is sort of interesting.
What is it about film that keeps you coming back for more and working in your own analog darkroom as well?
There's a number of things that attract me to film. Of course, there's the way of seeing, right? There's that, because of my age, of course, that's how I learned photography. I think part of my ability to work well as a photographer is that I continue to work with film. When you're working with film, you have to be a little sharper, a little more analytical, because, you know, often it's weeks, if not months, before I see that photograph. So it tends to bring you to a certain pitch of attention. I love the process, the craft of creating a beautiful print, and the look of a traditional analog print is something that I think is very special. I sometimes think of myself as a bit of an archaeologist, you know, collecting up little bits of history And if I'm doing it well, the photographs look good today, but they'll be fascinating in 100 years from now.